If you're like me, the more time you can spend with your grandchildren, the better. And having a 16-month-old granddaughter, Meli, far away in Bangkok, I decided to record bedtime stories. But the thought of writing, illustrating, and recording, it was a tad intimidating. So I put it off again and again because until now it meant having to learn and do a pile of things that made you feel like 200 years old. Today, I will show you how to create a fully illustrated bedtime story in 2 languages in just one afternoon. No design skills required, just 4 AI tools and 1 smart system. Hi, I'm Chantal and welcome to AI for 50 plus. Born before Wi-Fi, owning AI. Here's the plan. Today, we'll build a story tailored to a child's age and personality. I'll show you 3 frameworks I created for different age groups, how to rewrite and not translate stories in different languages, and how to generate beautiful, soft artwork without touching a paintbrush. By the end of this video, you'll know how to create your own personalized bedtime story ready to share. But the secret is not which tool to use, but actually how to prompt them. And that starts with a story blueprint. Let's go to my computer. Step 1 of 5 is the architect, because before you write a single word, you need a blueprint. I'm in ChatGPT and I want to bring you into one of my canvases. I'm in a chat here. And the canvas, you can click here on the icon and I'm going to go directly to the workflow. So most people would go into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and type, write me a story for a child. But between 2 years old and 7 years old, it's wildly different. Because I have a granddaughter, Calie, who's 5, I wanted to make sure that I had bedtime stories for her as well. So I decided to look at bedtime stories for 3 age groups. The toddlers, 1-2, the young child, 3 to 5 years old, and then the 6 to 7 years old. And I didn't really trust ChatGPT or any other to come up with the prompts. I wanted to do research and I wanted these prompts to be based on some rules. So what I did is I went into ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini and started looking at what would be the rules for bedtime stories for these 3 age groups with different rules for each. It looked at what type of story it should be, what would be the images, what would be appropriate in terms of tone, style, the number of words, the number of scenes. And thankfully, they came up pretty much with the same thing. So this is what we have here, the content rules. So if we look at them very briefly, we have here the age 1 to 2, and for them, it's not really a story. It's more like a spoken lullaby. There's no plot, no surprises, just sensory details like soft lights and gentle rhythms. And the tone is gentle and reassuring, very predictable, nothing unexpected. And the structure is between 130 and 140 words. And for the number of scenes, it was 10. And this is important for the next steps as well, because the architect is the one who develops the rules, but also creates the prompts and the prompts for the next step. So the step 2 will be the writer with Claude. So I needed a number of words, of course, and I tested a number of these prompts because I've been working on this for a few weeks now. And when I put a too wide of a range with Claude, and I'm assuming it would be the same with ChatGPT or Gemini, it gave me sometimes really short stories, like at the bottom of the range or even below a bit, and sometimes much more. And for a range, for example, for the toddlers, the range was originally from 120 to 160 words. Well, if you have 120 versus 160, it's very different. And I wanted some kind of uniformity. So you'll see that we're fairly specific in terms of the range of words. And the same thing for the scenes when we get to step 3, which is the Illustrator with NotebookLM. we need to have a specific number of scenes because I tried with a range, and what happens is sometimes if you don't attach the images to the scenes themselves clearly, I ended up with sometimes a sentence had two images and then a whole paragraph had only one. So you have to be specific there as well. And also an ending rule, because when we get to the older ages, sometimes it's a bit more active in terms of a story. And I wanted a transition at some point in the story towards the last third where it would start becoming calmer and more reflective and gentler so that when the bedtime story ended, they could actually go to sleep. Age 3 to 5, I call this the event-based story. It's more stories to help them process something big or fairly small, like a birthday, but also first day of school or first day in a new school or something, big events. Mild emotion was okay in this case. Fear and conflict was not. So you have the same structure in those rules, but you can see here in the tone and emotion, fear, danger, loss, anger, or distress are not included. You can have mild nervousness though. And in terms of the structure, 300 to 330 words, 15 scenes. And for ages 6 and 7, that's much more of a narrative. It's more of a story. And we have, again, the same thing, tone, emotion. You do have mild challenges for them, curiosity, but again, no fear, danger, threat, violence or loss, or suspense-driven pacing, which is fine for reading during the day, but not for a bedtime story. And in terms of the structure, 600 to 630 words and 20 scenes. I worked with ChatGPT to refine this. I tested it in Claude and NotebookLM. We also refined the prompts to go with that. So with Claude, we call it the master prompt because you only have to insert the theme or the idea and the setting here. And we give the number of words, of course, and the number of scenes. You have the same for 3 to 5, a bit different, and they integrate the rules that we've just seen with, of course, different target length and structure, and the same thing for 6, 7 years old. In terms of the 3 to 5 and 6 to 7, there's an additional part is the consistency for the characters, because I noticed I had tried other prompts that we'd worked on, and if I wasn't very specific on I want them to keep the same hair color, for example, well, I had issues, and I will show you that in one of the next steps. Then we worked on the NotebookLM prompts, and that one is much more of a visual style type prompt, so age 1 to 2, with the number of scenes, and then 3 to 5. We're going with watercolor in all cases, really, and 6, 7 years old, which is more illustrated storybook. And what we put in all of them, which was important, is no text on screen, because NotebookLM had a tendency sometimes of, even though I was not in the infographics, they had a tendency of putting some text there, and I didn't want that. I wanted simply the images. And we were then ready to move on to the second part, because when it comes to writing the story, I didn't want to use ChatGPT. I wanted to use Claude, because I find that Claude actually has a better writing skills. It sounds a bit more human. And even though you do have to do some work to refine what it will produce, there's less work to be done. So let's move on now to Claude. Here we are in Claude, and I started by working on a toddler story, and I'll show you a part of it towards the end. But I also wanted to do one for 6 and 7 years old. So I posted the prompt that you've seen in Claude here, and it gave me a very nice, oh, and I also added to that prompt, please group the sentences in 20 scenes, because I wanted this to help NotebookLM. So it gave me a very nice story. And then what is important is, of course, I also wanted French. Let's call this Emma's Moonlight Adventure, and in French, Emma et l'aventure au clair de lune. Please redo the story in French, same constraints, and not just a translation. I want a well-written Canadian-French story, and avoid passé simple, which is one of the verbs that is very stifled. So it gave me a story and I liked it. Once I started recording, I felt that it was odd in the past. So I asked again, well, can you rewrite that French version, but using present and imparfait, which is another past, but a bit more continuous past, so that it made more sense and it's much better. So I will change the prompt, or I will change my instructions next time. So now I have the French version here. That tiny shift from asking to rewrite instead of translating made a huge difference, because I did try saying, can you translate this, not thinking, in French? And the French was really not great. Now, I've got my English and French versions, and I'm ready to illustrate. And the next tool, NotebookLM, does that really beautifully. So let's move to NotebookLM. Step 3 is where the visual magic happens with the Illustrator NotebookLM. So what I did is I'm going to show you here, I opened a new notebook. And when you get this interface here, I went and copied text and I pasted the text, the story that Claude had just given me. And that's what I will show you here in this one. This is what you have here. The Moonlight journey of Emma and Mark is what I had pasted. I have it here. You need that because for you to be able to use the studio here and have something decent, you need to anchor it into your story. Therefore, I put it there, and then you go into the slide deck here and you press on the little pencil here, and I chose the detailed deck, default, and the language, French or English, depending. And then I pasted the prompt that we had worked with ChatGPT right here, and then you click on generate and you watch the magic happen. In this case, this is the one that I chose, and it was really nice. Now, I'll point out some different things here, but I got rid of the first one because once you get here, the style changes, and then it stays pretty much the same the whole time. I mean, it's really pretty. And if you look the last scene here, her bedroom, and you look at the first one, this one is the only one that is wildly different. So I decided not to use it. I want to show you, but it's really nice. If you look, it's like it goes so well with the story. It's like more storybook, a bit less. I'll show you the toddler one, which is a bit more pastel or watercolor, but it's still watercolor, so it's still nice. And I just want to show you one thing because I'll bring you after that into the fourth step. I want to show you this image here. If you look at this image, there's two scenes in one. You have this little creature that gives the blanket to Emma, and then you have Emma who's sharing the blanket with Mark. And I wanted this in two different scenes, but I didn't want to restart it. So I'll show you how I managed to do something with this. I tried the video overview to see if it would be better, because you can also customize it. And you can choose what kind of image you want. I believe there is watercolor here, and then you can put your prompt here. But I didn't like it as much because, of course, there's a voice, and then you have to remove the audio, and it was much more complicated. So the slide deck for me was the best one. But one of the issues is that once you have them, then you go here and you download them. And when you download them, you end up with a PDF with all the files together. And you need to be able to edit those images if you need to. Like I showed you, one image had two scenes. And for when you want to edit in a video editing tool, in my case, I use DaVinci, you need separate images. Now you get into the next step, which is step 4. And we're going to go to Canva. We are now ready for the separator or Canva step 4. Now, to do that, you go into uploads here and you upload files. and I have it here in this folder here, and you have it here in my Canva. You'll notice that I didn't keep the first slide. I kept this one, and then just to show you, they're all separated now, so that's great, and I can work on them. Remember this one, those two that were in one? So what I did is I actually used the edit here, and I went into, here we go, Magic Eraser. And it's really easy with Magic Eraser. I'm in it right now. If I press, oops, oh yeah, if you do click, it will identify things. So what I did is I did 2 copies of this first slide with everything on it. I erased them here. And then in the second one, I erased them. It's difficult to explain, to keep only them. So the rest is totally unchanged. Now there is a bit of a weird thing here, but you know what? It's on the moon. Maybe it looks like that. Now I can share this. And when you share them, you download, and PNG is fine, and you send them all and they stay separated. So that's the beauty of it. So you end up with totally separated images. Now comes the part that makes it feel real, which is adding your voice. So I'm in DaVinci Resolve because hopefully at some point I will be able to do my voiceover in DaVinci Resolve. I just learned that I can do that, and I haven't tried it. What I did is I simply took my iPhone and I used the native Apple app voice memos, and I took the text from Claude, read it fairly slowly, a bit slower than usual. And also I left some space between each scenes, and it worked really well. And once you have that, you can upload it in DaVinci. In DaVinci here, I had worked on an intro that I would repeat in all of the bedtime stories, irrespective. It's a bit babyish, and I'll have you listen to it, but irrespective of the age. And I created also an outro, which is the same for all the stories. So I downloaded the intro with my audio and the outro. Then I downloaded the audio. Then I downloaded each of the different images. And what you have to do is simply, there's not a lot of editing, is simply listening to the audio. You see that there's not a lot of cuts, actually, there's none. And I was just listening with the images going by, and I would shorten the video for the image or make it longer depending on the text. And then what I did, I didn't want this to look like a video, and that's why I used a slide deck, and that's why in here I'm not putting animation or a whole bunch of things, because I wanted, or even like sound effects, because I wanted to look like someone is reading you a story in a book. But I did put transitions in each of them, just smooth transition. And I did put a bit of a zoom that you'll see so that there's a bit of movement. Just one comment before I show you. I'll show you a part of this one, and then I'll show you the 6-7 years old one. I tried also, I was saying to myself, what would save me a lot of time would be to clone my voice in 11 Labs. And I tried that, and it sounded like me, but I didn't have control in terms of the pacing and the tone and the smile in the voice. So I decided, no, I'm just going to do it. It takes a bit more time because you have to read it yourself, but it doesn't take long. And I really felt that for my granddaughters, at least, they would recognize the voice much more. So I decided not to go with this. This is the story for the toddlers. I'll have you listen to maybe 1 minute. Good evening, Meli. Good evening, Calie. And good evening to all our other little friends. Get nice and cozy. Grandmama will read you a bedtime story. Good night, forest. The trees close their branches softly, softly. They are resting now. The leaves are still. They're sleeping. They're all peaceful and quiet. The little bird comes home to his nest. He closes his eyes. He's warm and cozy. The squirrel curls up in a ball. So soft, so small. So that's not bad. I mean, at the beginning, maybe it was a bit fast and it's not very long. The whole story is less than 2 minutes. So it's 1:55. Let me show you briefly the other one since you've seen Emma's Moonlight adventure. So we'll open it now. And I'll show you just a bit, not from the beginning, but it's the same intro. The creatures began to yawn, stretching their little arms and rubbing their eyes. One by one, they shuffled toward their glowing houses, waving goodnight to Emma and Mark. The smallest creature gave Emma a soft moon dust blanket that sparkled faintly. Emma wrapped it around her shoulders and smiled, then shared it with Mark. So there you have it. From an idea to fully illustrated story. I've showed you the English version, but I also have the French one in under 60 minutes. There's quite a bit of information and documents to share, and I didn't have enough space to put it in my description. So if you're interested in getting the content rules and the prompts for a specific age group, don't hesitate. Just ask me in the comments and I'll be happy to share them with you. And if you want to see both stories in French and in English, I'll put a link in the description with the URL of my new Bedtime Stories YouTube channel, and you can have a look. If you like this video, you'll love these. And I'll see you next week.